Excellent, everyone. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this very important online forum meeting we're having. I'm Sonia Wadman, and I'm the Executive Director of the Waltham Land Trust. And I just wanted to say a couple words about the Land Trust before we get into it. And that is we are our community's primary environmental nonprofit whose focus is preserving land, restoring ecosystems, and encouraging people to enjoy nature and learn about its benefits and to get outside. So we are a membership organization, which means the majority of our funding comes from people who pay us dues once a year. And it's only $25 for an individual or $50 for a household. And we do have another level, $15 if you can't swing the 15. It's the same level of membership that you get with the $25. It's just a little bit less. It's called the Living Lightly. And of course, we have membership options above 50. So if you're interested in joining us, please check out walthamlandtrust.org. It's our website where you can join us. Can I see those of you who are showing who's a member of the Land Trust? Yay, love seeing those hands. Thank you so much. Yay, awesome, great. Well, we think you are fabulous and we would love to have others join us. We do have programs throughout the year. We do walks, we do Zooms like this. Coming up on Saturday, we're going to be having a walk along the Mass Central Rail Trail, which is the new crosstown multi-use path that is open. However, the event is full. We had to limit registration because we can't have too many people on the trail. So if you're not signed up, you'll have to catch us next time. It's going to be a little chilly, but not as cold as today and yesterday. So I think it'll be quite enjoyable. On the same day, which is Saturday, this Saturday from 4 to 8 p.m. at Panera Bread at 1030 Main Street, we are having a fundraiser where if you go and order in person and show the cashier this certificate, which you can get on our website, you can ask, you can show them virtually. You don't have to have it printed out. Or if you order online anytime during the day with the code FUND4, the number 4, U, the letter U, fund for you, then we get 20% of your sale. So love it if you would go to Panera on Saturday, 4 to 8. And then lastly, next month on February 15th, we are having our annual duck walk along the Charles. Yeah, and we're really excited to be part of the Great Backyard Bird Count, which is an international event. So we'll be putting in what we see in Waltham into this huge database, and it'll be really fun. So that too is a registration only event, and it's up now on our website, walthamlandtrust.org. So if that interests you, sign up. Okay. So now I am going to introduce Alan Richardson, who is one of the leaders of Save Waltham Wildlife, which is the initiative that the Land Trust started a couple of years ago. And you'll learn about our history briefly in Michelle's presentation. But Alan, why don't you say hello? And then if you wouldn't mind, point out the other members of our coordinating group of Save Waltham Wildlife.
Yeah, so great to see you all here. And we're going to start the presentation very soon. And I want everyone to know that we'll have time for questions after the presentation. But if you have questions during, you can ask them on the chat. And we'll get to both the questions on chat and to hands that come up after Michelle's done with her presentation. So also with us are 2 other founding members of Save Waltham Wildlife, Linda Gretz. Linda's raising her hand, and Emily Sipek. And Michelle Grisenda has recently joined our steering committee, and she will give her presentation.
But actually, before we get to that, I just wanted to also thank Councillor Kathy Ann Harris for tuning in. And I believe Councillor Paul Cates under Paul's iPhone. I think I recognize your voice. And I'm sorry if there are other dignitaries that I'm not seeing right now. I know Councillor LeBlanc signed up to join us too, but he's been away, so I'm not sure if he's able to tune in. But he's helping us with this. And then I just also want to point that Honor Richardson and Diana Young are members of the Land Trust Board, as is Emily Sipek. And I think that's it for people who I have to call attention to. All right, now please, Ms. Grisenda.
Thank you, Sonia. Let's see if I can get my share screen to work here. All righty. And are you able to see the screen there? Sonia, you're in my view, so I can see you all. Good. Yep, full screen. Excellent, Alan. All right. So hello, everyone. My name is Michelle Grisenda. I'm a fairly new resident of Waltham. I moved in 2021, and I'm just so thrilled to be part of the Waltham city. And I live in the Cedarwood neighborhood. I have, however, been a lifelong bird lover, which really drew me to this particular topic that we're going to talk a little bit about today. And I'm realizing I'm starting on slide 2. Let me just go back one. Okay. And so today, as you are well aware, we're here to talk about a deeply frustrating topic of rat poison and the impact it's having on our hawks, owls, foxes, and coyotes. I'm going to talk a little bit about sort of a personal story I have on it, go into the Save Waltham Wildlife mission, talk a little bit about, what is the problem with the rat poisons being used? What are the alternatives? And also talk a little bit about what the city of Waltham's doing. There's some successes that we want to congratulate our city officials about. However, there's much more that needs to be done at both a local and state level. And that's where you all come into play, that we have some very specific asks for many of you today. And this is where I'm going to make a special plea about, sometimes we feel like there's so little we can do when it comes to laws and regulations. But I want to give us a little bit of hope that when it comes to the state of Massachusetts and also in our city, that there are a lot that you can do as a resident. Really just it takes acknowledging who to contact, and how to make that meaningful difference. And we have several sort of small steps and then slightly bigger steps. And we hope by the end of the presentation that we've inspired all of you to take action. And we're going to give you a lot of tools and resources, both in my slideshow and afterwards. We will send out a follow-up to today's presentation, and that's going to include the slides, the recording. So some folks, if you want to share it with other Waltham friends, we'd love for you to do that. And we'll give you a 2-pager with clickable links on how to do some very simple steps. I'm really hoping some of you will join us, Save Waltham Wildlife, to really make a difference here in our city. So with that, I will go back to slide 2. So who are Save Waltham Wildlife? Alan did mention a little bit about the team, and our goal is to save Waltham Wildlife by reducing the need for and eventually ending the use of second-generation anti-coagulant rodenticide in the city of Waltham. And we also work to achieve this goal through education, advocacy, and promoting alternative methods of effective rodent control. And we'll get into what that means in a moment. So Waltham story, and this is also my story. I was drawn, even before living in Waltham, I would visit a cemetery in town to see the bald eagles that actually were breeding and nesting. And it was such an amazing story of success to see this beautiful raptor, bird of prey, really a symbol of America, to be breeding again in Waltham after many decades of basically being extirpated from the city and from much of the state of Massachusetts. Making this comeback was an incredible journey. And many of us were so disheartened to learn that one of the female eagle had passed away, had died. And when it was brought in for testing, they discovered that it was actually rat poison that had killed it. That what happens, in case some of you aren't aware, and we'll go into this in more detail, that a lot of businesses will use a poison in these black bait boxes to attract rodents and rats to eat it. And it takes up to 10 days for the rat or rodent to die. And while it's dying, it is looking very tasty to a lot of our predators. And our eagles, hawks, owls, foxes, coyotes will eat these poisoned rodents and will start to accumulate in their system. And eventually that causes the death of our predators. It's basically they're hemorrhaging to death. And I'm really sorry for these kind of graphic pictures, but it's important to understand that Waltham has seen an alarming number of our raptors killed by this deadly poison. A number of people have called in wildlife rehabbers. These animals have been tested and they've been positively identified as dying from this rat poison. In 2023, there was another famous Waltham eagle that had actually hatched from the cemetery eagles in Waltham back in 2016. Its name was MK. MK was breeding in Arlington, and that bird as well ingested rat poison and ingested poisoned rodents from Arlington and ended up succumbing as well to rodenticide poisoning. And even as recent as 2023 and 2024, there were a number of red-tailed hawks found, two in the Brandeis campus near me, and also another one at Gore Place that were positively identified as having rodenticide poisoning. And if, as you can imagine, it's not as if when an animal is dying of rat poison, they're just going to fall in front of people so they can be found. This is really like a needle in the haystack. The fact that we are seeing so many of these birds of prey dying and dead of rat poison speaks to a much larger issue, that there are so many more that are dying in our woods, in our wetlands that we aren't even aware of. So this is a massive problem that we're going to go more into. So why is this such a problem? Basically, it comes down to the over-reliance of a rat poison or a suite of rat poisons that we call SGARs, second generation rodenticide. And they basically are the poison of choice that most pest control companies use. They use it probably because it they can go once a month. They put this poison in a black box. The rodents eat the bait. They disappear from the black box, so they don't have to be picked up. And of course, the rodent companies, the pesticide companies come back every month and keep putting these poisons out. And ultimately, it's having this impact on our hawks and owls, which is really terrible. There are hundreds of raptors and foxes and coyotes that were brought into the New England Wildlife Center in the last 2 years. All of those tested positive to rat poison. Dozens of pets have been treated at Angel Vet Clinic from rat poison as well. So it's not just our, wildlife, it's also our pets. Children are still being affected by it. Interestingly, SGARs were banned for retail sale several years ago by EPA. However, pesticide companies still have access to them. And also, unfortunately, you can buy it on Amazon. So it's quite ubiquitous out there. And that is part of the problem. Let's see here. So, like I said, the SGARs it's actually a collection of these types of chemicals that have found to be effective in causing hemorrhaging of these prey species that will feed on this bait. It's, like I said, widely used in Massachusetts. I'll have numbers later on the amount. I believe it was like 240 tons of SGARs were used in Massachusetts in 2023. We're talking huge amounts of poison that is actively being used by pest companies throughout the state of Massachusetts. And interestingly enough, a lot of companies, a lot of businesses, restaurants, schools that hire pest companies, they don't even know what the pest company is using. I have had personal experience where I've approached an organization and they're like, oh, we wouldn't use rat poison. There's no way. And I said, well, can you just get the data sheet from your pesticide company? And I just want to see what they're using. And it turned out they were using SGARs, and the company was mortified. They had no idea. And so part of it is this education thing that we're going to get into a lot more later. So I'd love to just see a raise of virtual hands or your real hands on if you've seen a black bait box in Waltham. I'm assuming most of you have. It is one of these things that once you start looking for them, you start seeing them everywhere. But it is one of those things that we really want folks to start looking out for and kind of keeping an eye on. And it's kind of sad, like every time my husband and I walk around, it's just like we see them in so many places in Waltham. Um, Sometimes they'll have a label on the box. If it was an indoor box, it is required that the pest company put if there is a rat poison being used, if the box is inside. However, the boxes we see a lot of times are outside the building, and there's no legal requirement that the pest company actually put what poison is in it. And so again, you should assume, or I assume when I see a black box, likely it does have an SGAR poison in it. And again, you wouldn't really know unless you asked the property owner and asked the property owner to see those data sheets from the pest company. Oops, sorry about that. So what is the alternative? The alternative is what we call an integrated pest management program, looking at the problem and solving it from where our solution can be, where the real solution is. And ultimately, poison is not going to control the rat problem. We have had rats in Waltham and in much of Massachusetts for decades and decades. This is not something that's going to go away with SGARs. The reality is, in order to be an effective at reducing the rat population, everyone needs to come together and look at excluding them, creating your buildings, excluding ways for rats to get into those structures. And we'll talk more about that. Then also starving the rodents. They need a food source. And so if we're better at containing our trash and having no food resources available for the rats, that's going to lower the population. And then ultimately, you're still going to possibly have, sort of a pest problem that's with those other two methods isn't being as effective as it needs to be. Well, then you can target. You can actually use specific snap traps. There's different carbon dioxide options, contraceptives. We'll talk about those. And last resort, there are some poisons that are not going to have what we call this bioaccumulation. It's not going to have a secondary effect on other animals. One of those is a vitamin D3, and we'll talk about that too. So there are solutions other than using the SGARs. And several organizations have already implemented these IPM programs and have removed poison as an option. Schools, municipalities, Mass Audubon, and some of the major shopping centers are starting to switch over. And that's what we really want to gain momentum on. So let's talk a little bit about exclusion. This is a challenge because some of us live in really old homes or buildings, or maybe we rent and we don't have as much control over some of those things. But it really can make a huge difference if you hire a company or contractor to really look at any of these small, tiny openings and look at how you can put wire mesh to control any of these infestations that happen in your house. I know when I moved into our 1930s Cape, we had some mice, and we had to go around and really locate all the tiny holes to kind of stick with some wire mesh to try to reduce it. And we really did with that, which was great. We also were very mindful about our food and made sure everything was in containers so that we weren't necessarily attracting the rodents inside. The reality is we started our presentation tonight talking about how cold it is. These animals are looking for a safe, warm place to go. That's just sort of what they're doing. And so if there are obvious and easy ways for them to get into buildings, they're going to do it. So really trying to work on ways to exclude them out of your building is important. I heard a tip today actually was that rodents don't like hot sauce. And so I have an issue with, I had rodents get into my car hood, my engine area. It was like a little condo for rodents. My amazing mechanic took a picture. He's like, Michelle, you're not going to believe how many things were living under the hood of your car. And so we cleaned it all out, but you can put hot sauce on, like if you have if you know of places where animals are getting in, you can try to kind of put hot sauce or something spicy, and that will sort of help as well. Starving. Okay, so rats need food. And so the biggest thing that we can all do is control our trash and our food resources. And so this goes far and wide. Okay, it's about leaving food out in places where rats can get it. So the most important thing is to make sure you have a covered lid outside for all of your trash and make sure it gets in there. I have to say, one of the things that frustrates me the most is when I'm walking around and I see these overflowing trash canisters, I see overflowing dumpsters. And right there, we're not going to control the rat population until everyone helps by keeping their trash lidded and sealed. Some of us who like to compost and feed birds, this does affect us as well, because a bird feeder by day is going to be a rat feeder by night. So it's really important that we bring them in or have sort of rodent control feeders. I love feeding the birds, but because of the rodent problem, what I'll do is I just sprinkle seed out in the winter on my deck in my yard so I can watch them during the day. And the birds like suck it up in like an hour and a half, and there's no extra food for the rats at night. Similarly, if you compost, you want to make sure that's well sealed as well. If you start seeing holes getting into your compost, that's a perfect food source for them, and you want to prevent that. Examples of our big bellied trash cans, we're going to talk about that. Hopefully some of you have seen them at Moody Street recently. That's another good tip for companies and for cities to encourage the use of. The picture on the right is actually a fun picture of spice. We were talking about spice and how rodents don't like spicy stuff. You can actually buy a sunflower seed mix with actually spice added to it, heated spice, so that they do not like the taste of it. And you can buy that, I know, at the Wild Birds Unlimited store in Sudbury. And so again, the target here is that we want to understand that really the best control of rats is our predators. So we don't want to do anything that's going to affect them. And there are different targeted approaches to rodent control that do not involve this poison. We talked a little bit about, well, let's talk about snap traps, and I'm happy to report that the city of Waltham have switched over from not using any poison in their black bait boxes on city property. And instead, they're using these snap traps. So just because you see a black bait box doesn't necessarily mean that there's poison in them. So that, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of the things the city has been doing. Another thing I learned about was this electronic trap. So there's actually, this works well for like maybe a homeowner, less suitable for like a business. But what happens is it's a baited box that has electricity circuit in it. But what happens is it requires the rodent to eat the bait, and the back foot closes the circuit and electrifies and kills the rodent. So yes, obviously the rodent is dying, but it's not affecting any other creature. It does require you to remove the carcass, which is a little bit more labor intensive. Other options are rodent contraceptives, and City of Newton has been using that very effectively. Also, there's a pilot study in JP that has had mixed results. Obviously, however, I believe that in that bottom right picture is actually of the bait that is infused with birth control. I believe it's only active for 45 days, so it does require constantly using it to keep the fertility low in these small mammals. The other thing that we've heard has been very useful is either carbon dioxide traps or dry ice. And so if you have active rat burrows on your property, and they are basically the burrow holes about the size of a tennis ball. So I have a lot of little tiny holes. I know those are shrews or some chipmunks. I'm not worried about them. But if you have a hole the size of a tennis ball and you start finding scat, you can look up what rat scat looks like. That can be a little project you have later. You have a rat problem if you find that, and then you could look at alternatives like basically companies can come in and they will they will blow in a carbon dioxide, and it basically kills the animals within that hole, but again, doesn't affect anything else, which is great. And then lastly, there are some non-poison baits that have, one of them's like this vitamin D that works pretty well. I think it's actually, I think Decon is the name of the retail product that you can get from Ace Hardware or Agway likely. There's also a corn gluten meal called Radex, which coats the rodent's digestive system, and basically they lose the sensitivity of thirst and they dehydrate and die. So again, these will not affect hawks or owls, which is great. Let's see. Okay, so a little bit about what Save Waltham Wildlife has done. I've just become part of it in the last few months, so I do want to give great credit to my team here, advisory group, that did work and attended key city council meetings and committee meetings to sort of educate city councilors on this issue. They hosted in-person and online forums on the issue, trying to encourage residents to become advocates as well. Save Waltham Wildlife joined what's called Rescue Raptors. It's a Mass Audubon program, which is trying to start campaigns in every town and city in Massachusetts. And they've been very effective in providing resources to communities to help educate residents and business owners about the problem. Save Waltham Wildlife has written to the mayor, city councilors, city officials, expressing our concerns over a number of issues. Those include discontinuing SGARs on city property, which is wonderful that we do know now that the city does not use SGARs. Providing lidded trash bins to all residents, and we'll give you an update on that. Encouraging big belly trash receptacles for Moody Street. Employing alternative means for rodent control, including the contrapest, which is the contraceptive. And we've also been working with the Conservation Commission staff on promoting poison-free rodent control. So here are the successes we've had. In 2024, the city officials committed to only using non-SGAR, non-poison rodent control in the city. So the black traps that you see on city streets that are city-owned should only have snap traps on that. And I do want to applaud, my city councilor, Cates, who's on the call today. He was really communicative. I reached out to him when I started seeing the black boxes on my walk in Cedarwood, really concerned about what was in them. He reached out to the Board of Health and confirmed that, in fact, the city is simply just using snap traps in that. And several other Save Waltham Wildlife folks have also heard from their city councilors and city officials of the same news. So that's a really good success for us. Also, the city installed big belly trash receptacles on Moody Street, which will really hopefully help with the trash problem, making sure that there's no extra stray food being left on Moody Street itself. And a bigger one that we're really hoping for everyone's help with is in 2025, actually in the next couple months, the city council, I believe, will be reviewing proposed dumpster ordinance. This will be a new potential law that will require all property owners of dumpsters to register that dumpster with the city. And that will also allow the city to enforce any trash issues related to that dumpster. Again, I just hate going around town and seeing that bottom right picture, an open dumpster full of trash. Some of our apartment complexes, are constantly overflowing with trash. And it'd be really nice to have some regulatory authority to be able to control that trash problem. So this is where you folks come in. We have 7 sort of action steps that we're going to send you in a follow-up email. And we really hope that you'll help with not just 1 or 2 of these, but maybe even 3 or 4 or 5 or 7 of them. So we're going to go through each of these in the next few slides. Starting with joining Save Waltham Wildlife. So if you haven't joined yet, or you're not sure if you joined yet, we've created a new tiny URL and we'll send you this link. It's just tinyurl.com /SWW pledge 2025. And it's just a Google form that will ask you your name, your email address, what part of town you live in, if you're willing to commit to help. with maybe contacting some businesses for us. If you know of a business, you might know a business owner, or you might live in an apartment complex or have a friend who lives in that complex who could make an ask or an inquiry. Those are the people we're starting to look for, is people who have a connection with a big property owner in Waltham, and that would be super helpful for us. And if you don't have any, we can certainly find some of our bigger property owners that we need help with. And I understand that making this ask in person to a property owner might not be your cup of tea, but there's lots of other things that we can have you help us with. The other thing that's really important to do is, if you see a sick or dead predator, to call or contact a wildlife rehabber. There's momentum to require the state to ban SGARs in the entire state, and we're hitting resistance from that. So pesticides are actually regulated by the state through Massachusetts Department of Agriculture, MDAR, and they're the ones who determine what chemicals are allowed or not allowed. And right now, they're looking into studying the potential impact that SGARs have on wildlife, but they're not willing to ban it quite currently. And what they were needing to do is have more wildlife rehabbers test those dead and dying animals to confirm that they are dying of SGARs, and start collecting that data. And so Cape Ann Wildlife does actually have the funding, and they are currently testing every predator that comes in to confirm whether it has SGAR poisoning or not. That data will be used in future legislation and lobbying of our state officials to ban this deadly chemical. If you do see a dead rat or rodent on city property, it is important to contact the Public Works for removal. We don't want any of these animals that may have SGARs, because again, rats and rodents are traveling from many, many different properties. So you could have a rat that died of SGAR poisoning from an apartment complex die on a city sidewalk, and we want that animal removed so that a raptor does not pick it up. And please make sure you photograph and make note of that location. Whoops. Again, a very important step for us all to do is to control the rodents around our home or our apartment. If you do rent, obviously it's a little bit tougher because we only have so much control over what our facility is doing. But again, as a tenant, you do have the right to inquire and to try to make some changes at that level. But hopefully you're all covering your trash, shutting dumpster lids, not leaving pet food and bird feeders out overnight, keeping girls clean. I wasn't even thinking about that one. I mean, usually, my husband and I will be making burgers late at night, and I don't even think about cleaning it up until the next morning. So that's a definite problem with attracting rodents. Rodent proofing your structures with wire mesh, inspecting your property and looking for evidence of rodents. Vegetation, you don't want really close vegetation to your house, which again, as a nature lover, native plant lover, that can be hard. Although quite honestly, most of our cities, it's a lot of invasive plants that are growing close to our buildings. So just try to trim back so that you're not encouraging a lot of overgrowth next to your structure. And again, if you do have a rodent infestation, you've tried to deal with it on those other options. You might want to contact a pesticide company, but urge them, tell them you insist that no SGARs are used. They do have other alternatives, so they should be using these other alternatives. And so we talked a little bit at the beginning about looking for these black bait boxes. And so the purpose for that is, this is a great starter point for, if you want to go to a business or company, say I'm shopping at Market Basket and I look around and I might see boxes around, and I'm not sure actually if I have not seen them at Market Basket, but let's just say for example, then I would take a picture of it. I'd see if the label has anything on it, likely not. I'd also want to look at their dumpster, see okay, is their dumpster lid open? Is there a bunch of trash on the ground? Because that's giving me data. So when I decide to go in and talk to the property owner or manager, I can give them some information on better ways to control rat problems than poison. Certainly if you see a damaged bait box, that is actually sanctioned through the Mass MDAR, Mass Department of Agriculture, because if it is broken like this, a dog or a child can get into that poison. And again, dogs and children are getting poisoned from this chemical. So it's very important to report any damaged bait boxes that you might see around the city. And then our big ask is going to be to see if we do have some friends on the Zoom today that will help educate our neighbors, our businesses, about alternatives to rat poison. And we're going to send you sample talking points. We have sample flyers that you can use. Again, a lot of this is not blaming anybody. Like I said, I've had direct experience where I've had a property owner say like, oh, I'm definitely not using it. And they were floored to find out they were. A lot of this is education, and we're going to come upon this with really sort of an inquiry based and sort of a collaborative approach to help our property owners and managers kind of making the right decisions on this. And again, we will send you a bunch of information. It is important to sort of stay committed to the cause once you do start talking to a property owner or manager, because some of these bigger businesses might have, they might not be directly involved with who hires the pest company. So you might have to hound a little bit a couple times. Some of us are really good at that, like myself, but you do sort of have to put little ticklers on your calendar to make sure that they're just not ignoring you. But again, we're coming up through this with an education sort of inquiry-based approach. And then also, it's still really important to contact your city councilor, your councilors at large, the mayor. We'll send you a sample letter. We do want to thank them for not using SGARs on the city. We're very fortunate that our municipality does not use them on city property. We want to acknowledge that we are grateful that they put in the Big Bellies trash containers on Moody Street. However, we still do have a trash problem, and the city does require that all trash containers have lids, and we're not seeing compliance with that. And we get it, it's a huge city, but there are city officials, staff people that are required or responsible, I should say, for enforcing the trash lid requirement. So a question that a lot of us have is, how do we move forward with ensuring that, there's proper enforcement for lidded trash containers? Are there ways to provide lidded trash containers for residents who don't have them or can't afford them? And also, we're just learning about this dumpster ordinance that we will share more information with you about. It's really important that this ordinance gets passed, so we'll have a lot more control over the dumpster and the trash problem associated with it. One of the first things I did when I moved to Waltham, because I do love to do advocacy work and campaigning, is I wanted to find out who is my city councilor. I really didn't know. I looked on the city map. We'll send you the link. I found out I'm in Ward 7. And early on, I emailed my city councilor, Kate's. And, I encourage everyone to reach out to your city councilors. You voted for them. They rely on your votes. It's very important that they understand what issues you have, regardless if it's SGARs or other issues. It's a great thing to just sort of reach out to your city councilors and express sort of what's on your mind. And lastly, it's also important that we look at this from a statewide level. We have great news that a new bill was just filed last week called an Act Restricting the Use of Rodenticides in the Environment. It's been filed in the House by Representative Hawkins, and the Senator by Senator Moore. These bills would phase out the use of SGARs in the entire state of Massachusetts, which we so need to get to. However, it needs support from as many legislators as possible. Everyone in Waltham sort of has in their district Senator Michael Barrett. Super important to reach out to Michael Barrett and let him know that you are concerned about this issue. Really rally, advocate for him to become a co-sponsor of this bill. And it could be as simple as that. Just send a simple one-sentence email explaining that you're concerned about the dying hawks and owls, that you really want to make sure that this chemical is banned in the state of Massachusetts. It's also important to talk to our state representatives, and we actually have 2 depending on where you live in Waltham. So these are just maps I took from the city website. But most of us, I believe, have Tom Stanley. And some of us also, though, have Representative John Lawn. So that's sort of in like the south well, east or southeast part of the city. So do check that out and reach out to your state representative, and also encourage them to co-sponsor and support that bill. And again, we will send you all these links as a follow-up. So with that, I so appreciate your attention. I hope I've inspired some of you to help save Waltham Wildlife with some simple tasks. We're going to try our best to get out this information probably early next week, and give you specific information on how to start taking action with these very important items. I want to give a quick thanks to Mass Audubon Rescue Raptors campaign. A bunch of those slides that I shared today came from them. And also thank Waltham Land Trust and Save Waltham Wildlife for all the work that you've done to this point. And I'm going to turn it over, I think, to Alan, who's going to start us off on our question and answer section. I'll stop sharing.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Michelle. That was really inspiring, and really a really effective, efficient presentation. I think we all appreciate it. You're getting some applause in the chats. And now I want to invite people to ask questions, make comments. You can do that by raising your Zoom hand, and that's the best way for me to see it. And let's see. I wanted first to invite my ward counselor, Counselor Harris, to fill us in on the dumpster ordinance in progress. She chatted on that, but I think it'd be great to hear from her live. So Kathy Ann, would you say something?
Yeah, sure. Hi, thank you for that. Thank you, Michelle, for your presentation. And I want to thank the Land Trust and the um, out, outreach from the Waltham Wildlife Community Forum. And I think it was a smaller group before it became more formalized, that was concerned about the recent raptor deaths that occurred. It was very hard to see that, knowing that we have a rat problem, but we're thinking we're solving one problem and causing another. And there's been, the use of rodenticides really, if you look at the studies that have been done, and I mean, I'm about to go to MMA, which is the Mass Municipal Association, which is a conference that's held in Boston where all elected officials across the Commonwealth attend. One of the #1 conversations that is had there has to do with rat prevention and the ways to handle that without having it cross over into other animal and people populations, and prevent the public health issues that are there. So the biggest issue for me right now is, working on this dumpster ordinance. And how this came about was, we had worked on trash containers. Things were not in lids, kind of going at this in a very simplified way. And an ordinance is a way to create enforcement in our city and allow us to work through a structured way to be able to educate people, much like you guys are. The advocacy comes in and says, hey, we need this. The ordinance comes in and says, okay, this is how we can structure this in the city, make rules of the road so that everybody knows what those rules are to prevent, trash containment, trash being unlidded. And we've been working on that for 2 years. That has brought enforcement to the lidded trash ordinance that everybody kind of gets notified on. There is an inspector that drives throughout the city and inspects each trash day. And first time you have a violation, you get a warning. The second time there's a small fine, and the fines increment from there. And it's brought along with education. That has brought some success. The second part was we noticed that, well, we're asking all the residents to put lids on their trash, but yet on Moody Street in our parks and on city properties, the trash wasn't lidded. Right. So that also came through observation and advocacy, which we very much appreciated. And that brought forward the Big Belly solar compactable trash cans and recycling, which we're happy to have on Moody Street. And I'm grateful to have worked with Robert Logan, who isn't on this call, but has been a co-sponsor, because we're truly on the front lines of rat remediation here on the south side. And then the third leg of this came through a lot more complaints that we get from dumpsters just being uncared for, unlidded, overflowing, the plug in the bottom of the dumpster, missing. So, rats are running in and out of these dumpsters. And when you can put out snap traps, you can put out these other food sources that would affect their ability to reproduce, they're still going to go for that dumpster food. It's just more attractable. It's more, the scent of it is stronger. It's a known entity. And when you talk in the circles of experts, these are rat buffets. Okay, so you can have a nice little sample of something over here that we're trying to feed the rat to control the population, yet they can go to that dumpster 24/7. This is occurring behind large complex apartments, restaurants, even anybody who's doing food service at all. The ordinance of this the scope of this dumpster ordinance is to focus on the food sources. So what it really does is create a registration for all the haulers. So you can't get a dumpster without registering with a hauler, like Easy Dumpster. Those are the haulers in our city. So Robert and I didn't spend time going, oh, we're going to go do this. We spent time talking to the health department, to CPW, to other communities to find out how they were able to manage some of this and enact legislation that actually made a difference with the dumpsters. And it is to work through the hauler. So they will have to register to be able to manage a dumpster in our city that has food in it. So that starts at the source of it. It doesn't touch construction or any of the other non-food use dumpsters. This is just purely focused on the food. So the first thing is to register. The second thing is to comply. And I'm happy to share with you the legislation. It's tabled on the council floor, as I said, and we're ready to do a first reading now that we're back in government. We just reelected our government structure, so we really couldn't do anything the first couple of weeks, but we're ready to do that. But what it would also, and so when this passes, what it will do is create enforcement. So it has to be lidded at all times. We would hire an inspector, someone that would do both rats and trash under one purview, managing both of the ordinances and educating along the way. If people miss the education or ignore the education, then there would be nominal fines that start, but do get incremental. And today, if someone ignores, the health department who gets a dumpster complaint, it takes us almost a year to get that back in line. And it's several trips to court. And in evidence, not calling out any one's place here, but there was a huge problem in Garden Crest. And, that required a court order to deal with. And that's certainly not an efficient way to manage trash and public health. So there's a lot in what I'm saying, but I'm trying to share with you kind of how we've been alongside you, moving the needle and listening. And this dumpster ordinance goes a long way for that. It creates the registration at the point of insertion. You can't just go buy a dumpster and stand it up. You have to have someone to haul it. So the haulers bringing that into the fold allows us to capture all the dumpsters in one fell swoop. The second part is that the requirements of the dumpster has to be sealed. It has to have the lids. It has to have that plug in the bottom, and the dumpster would then be inspected. And these haulers would also know that if they had a violation, that they put a dumpster in with a hole in it or something else, there's additional fines associated with that. So it makes them rotate, proper equipment through our city. And this by no means is the end all be all of anything, but it's one more tool in the toolkit of trying to address this problem. Thank you, Ellen, for the opportunity to speak.
Yeah, thanks, Councilor Harris, and thank you for being an advocate for our wildlife. Sandra, you have a hand up.
Yes, I'm sure that many of you have noticed this, but the trash containers in Graverson Park are not sealed. They're open. There's a cement lid over the top to keep rain and stuff out, but there's a large opening. So there's a city park where something needs to be done. And I live across the street from the park and have worried about this because of the potential for rat problems. And Jackie the terrier, my dog, caught a rat a couple of years ago in the backyard. and ended up hemorrhaging from both ends. And we were at Angel all night and she's fine. But I'm concerned about the rat problem.
And
So
Sandy, at Angel, did they say that that it was rat poison?
No, but the symptoms were pretty obvious.
Yeah, so they didn't test it, but they've seen it. They know
No.
what. Yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
Sorry to hear about your dog.
Yeah.
the Graverson issue, just so that this doesn't like go anywhere, I'll take a note and I'll forward that to that counselor, and that counselor can follow up with CPW and parks. You know, it's not too late to order them and install them. So I can pass that along on your behalf, Sandra.
Thank you.
No problem.
May I actually say that, Counselor, while you're on that, we'd love it if you could advocate for big bellies on all of our parks. In Michelle's presentation, she noted that they're on Moody Street, but they're also on Main Street and on the Waltham Common, which is great, but there's a ton of parks that maybe they
So,
could be installed at as well.
so in the resolution that we wrote, the be it resolved, which is the action that was sent to City Hall, which would hit the mayor's desk and work with CPW, was to put it on Moody and Main in all of our parks. So it wasn't just Moody and Main, but this allows a second level of advocacy. So I will ask if you know that is still on the desk. If it's been disposed, we can bring in another resolution very easily and ask for all parks now to follow suit. So I can take that action and work with the at-larges and the ward counselors to bring that forward. I'm inspired.
Awesome. One last thing, and I'll be quiet. Speaking of at-large, I know that Counselor at-large Randy LeBlanc has been on through his
Yeah.
phone, but I'm not seeing it now, but I just want to make
Yes.
sure that we acknowledge.
I'm here if you can hear me. Can you hear me, Sonia?
Yeah.
Yes, I
we
can,
hear
Randy.
Hi, how are you?
Counselor.
Yeah, I've been on the call. Thank you for recognizing me. And thanks to Councilor Harris and Councilor Cates. And thank you, Alan and Michelle, for your advocacy, and Sonia. We definitely, you know, have a rat issue. Sonia is quite aware. I bought the community farm on Beaver Street, so I see all the wildlife over there and enjoy it. And had chickens, definitely had rats, and I also managed some property. And you know, with the dumpsters, we've had some rats, so I've had dealings with a variety of the pest control companies out there, and we've done some a little bit of the birth control. And one of them was, it was exactly that, coming from a different property, which was mentioned here. So they used some CO2 in the burrows because they were coming from other properties, and that seemed to work without the rodenticides. So one of my thoughts and suggestions, I was working with Sonia, would be to, when the dumpsters all get registered, and I'm going to work with the health department. I know all building permits are public record, and I'm wondering if this is going, if it's, the dumpster permits will be public record, because as stated, I think it was from Michelle, was that education is one of the largest components of this. So if we happen to have a registry of all of the dumpsters, it'll take a lot of the work out of this for us, and maybe we could have an educational forum. Sorry about the dinging, a couple of texts came in, but we could have an educational forum and invite them all in. I did speak with two of the local pest control companies. One was Bobby Cormier, and the other was John Vallerin of NW Pest, and they would be happy to do an educational seminar on the various ways. We could do it at Government Center, and maybe even ask the health department to come in attendance. And one other thing is, to Councilor Harris's comments, I do know that, and it was not that long ago, maybe a month or 2 months ago, when they hired a full-time person to go around and evaluate all the trash receptacles. They've been very strict with lids and trash bags, and given out warnings first time around, and it does state in the warning, please call. And I actually got one, funny enough, on one of the properties. And what had happened was I had just started a recycling program there. There was no recycling. And the part of the education was that some of the tenants were putting the recycling in the recycling bin in a trash bag, and then the recycling company came, and when they went to dump the barrel, they just took the trash bag out and dropped it on the sidewalk and drove away. So there was a trash bag there, and I got one of the warnings and, you know, explained it to her. She's good about working with people, and second, third time around, they start doing fine. So it seems like that's taking off also. And that's all I have to add. But as it comes forward, we can, and we can have a seminar as we get the data, and I'd love it if everyone from the Land Trust attended and showed support, and the advocates. That would be great. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Emily, you have a hand up.
I do. Councilor LeBlanc, thank you for joining. In the past, I have observed what I think is one of your properties, one of the LeBlanc family operation properties, definitely a Coumadin based. I don't have the picture with me now. Trap. This was within a year or two now. Do you currently, to your knowledge, use any Coumadin based traps on any of your LeBlanc family properties? Oh, and could we see any of your could we see your MDAR sheets? Would you be open to making your MDAR sheets public?
Sure. I don't have them handy, but I would be willing to do that. But I don't. We're separate, so there's a couple of LeBlancs with the property, so I don't manage the other property, so I can only speak for mine.
Okay, I would love if you would make so I said MDAR, sorry, getting all my ag and chemical acronyms made. I am asking you to make your material safety data worksheets available to the Waltham Land Trust and this group, please. Thank you.
Sure, absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you. That's awesome. Appreciate it. Rock on.
Thanks, Emily. Helen.
Oh, hi. I appreciate everything that people have been doing. I wasn't aware of some of the issues, excuse me, but and I'm very happy. You know, I've been very concerned about the rodenticides, but I live in a complex, and there are lots of black boxes around here. And I have a very practical question. Is there a way that I can look into this black box to see if, you know, they have the rodenticide in there or traps before I may have to consult with people about the best way to do that, because I would be very upset that, you know, we have the, you know, chemicals in there. So is there a way to open it up safely and take in there?
No, don't try to open them. They need a special key, and they have poison in them, so you don't want to get your hands in them. But they used to all have labels on them that said if there were poisons, and the ones that you're building may, so you can take a look at them and see if there's a label on it, and we'll send you information on what the second generation poisons are. But the other thing you can do is find out who does your property management, and ask them and say, I'm a concerned, resident of this building, and I'd really like to know what you're putting in your black boxes. And you could become then an advocate for them switching over if they are using second generation anticoagulants. This will be part of the info.
Yes, yeah, I know this is part of your training, and there are some issues that would make it difficult for me to do this, but I would love to work with somebody else to see if we can find out. So thank you. Again, I appreciate everybody's work and all the things that are happening in Waltham. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Helen. Linda, did you want to respond to that?
I think you can also call the pesticide company. If you contact the owner of the property, they might well say, I don't know what's in it, but the pesticide company does. So you you could try that approach. I have a quick question for Counselor Harris. And is she still here?
Yeah.
I'm here.
Thank you. I want to thank you for the work that you've done. I somehow managed to find the ordinance, the proposed dumpster ordinance on the website, and I cannot find it. It's so hard to find things on the city
I know,
website.
it's hard for me
Can
too, trust me.
Could you send us a copy of that
Yeah.
proposed ordinance? That would be
I
great.
was gonna send it to Sonia, if that's okay, and then she could distro.
Yeah,
Okay.
that'd be wonderful.
And
Thank
there's a schedule of, and I just want to, continue to stress that if you just supply something and you don't remind people what the importance is, you can educate, but what really drives it home is like, hey, we really do need to be putting lids on barrels. Trash needs to be in bags and in barrels. And if you pay somebody to educate first, and then they don't, the only thing you can do is then start to remind them with a fine. I mean, that's what stops speeding. That's what stops a lot of things, that we are working with in a municipality. And it is part of the toolkit. So it's not trying to punish anyone to hire someone and enforce these dumpsters. This dumpster work is going to be very similar to the trash work in that it's going to take time for this to bake in. And the first level of anything we would do as a city would be to educate, educate, educate. And if you can talk to a hauler that has 150 dumpsters and they get an education from the city that we're going to start enforcement, you can hit 150 dumpsters from one hauler. And that is a big bang for the dollar of the person doing this education enforcement. So I will give you the current language of the dumpster and also the fine structure so that you know kind of where we're headed with that. And I'll make sure Sonia has that tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. And let us know if we can help advocate. That's what we're here to do.
Yeah, I do think advocacy is important. I mean, I think what we tried to do, we tried to get this done December 23rd. Like we were in session till the 23rd of December, just how the calendar fell. And we really were trying, we worked all year on it. We really were trying to get, kind of everybody's opinion and perspective into this. And there were people worried we were going to hurt small business. There were people concerned about would we be able to get, make an impact if we had everybody register a dumpster. That's why going to the haulers was important. So I just want everybody to know that we really did make this a focus last year. And when we're getting ready here and geared up, I will reach out to Sonia and just let her know, we're looking for advocacy. I think reaching out to city councilors now on passing this dumpster ordinance, since the vote is imminent, there's no reason to delay that advocacy to show what's important to you and why we need to pass this. I think that could happen next week and it would make an impact.
Thank you. Thanks again, Councilor Harris.
ahead.
Emily Zipek, you have a hand up.
Yes, I would also like to mention in the if people are looking at black boxes, one, do not go onto private property, and two, we will be giving you an update. This information is very important and it can be put into a database. There's Anecdata has a database where they report SGARs, so we'll know the exact location of the black boxes, and that's really important that we know where they not regardless of what is in them. It's important that we keep the database because there are things that can be done in Massachusetts that are requiring information be put in a database. So you'll be following up with more information on who exactly you can report that information to.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks, Emily. So I see people are voting with their feet. We're losing some of our group here, but there's still time. I think we have another 20 minutes if people have questions.
May I ask a question?
Yeah, Councilor LeBlanc.
Two
please.
questions. Thank you so much. I did see that Emily Sapira made a comment that I use coagulants in my property. I don't know which property she was referring to, if she would care to state that.
I think she has left.
Okay, so
yeah,
she was a tenant at one of my family members at a property, and I don't have anything to do with that property, so I don't know what they do or don't do, if they have rats or they don't. But I do know that's probably what she's referring to. I just wanted to clarify that. But the second thing is, Sean, you can reach out to me after this and as it gets going if we would like to do an educational seminar to, for all of the dumpster owners, if we can work with them so that we can make them aware of the different options, and having the pest control companies buy in, I think would be a big thing to get this out there.
Yeah, thank you. Great suggestion. Good. Anyone else? Anyone else? Questions, comments? Sonia has an hand up.
I just wanted to acknowledge that another member of the Waltham Land Trust Board and member of Save Waltham Wildlife is Debbie's iPhone 2, I believe, Debbie Herman. So I just want to make sure that we acknowledge her presence here too. Thanks for joining us, Debbie.
Cindy, you have a hand up.
Yeah, this is a little off the topic of rats, but it's on the topic of raptors and other birds. I live in central New York. I'm a member of our land trust in this area. But the next town over has a pair of peregrine falcons. And I don't know how many rats they have, but they seem to have an awful lot of rock doves or pigeons. And I was wondering if Michelle knew if the peregrine falcons are likely feeding on the rock doves or feeding on rats, and if they poison pigeons as well as rats. Where do we need to start to try to protect them?
Yeah, great question, Cindy. Peregrine falcons are a wonderful bird that we all want to make sure, flourish. We do have a few peregrines that also nest in Boston. They're sort of cliff dwellers. So the closest we have in Boston, of course, are skyscrapers. But there are a couple that will nest actually on buildings in Boston. And similar to your situation, the peregrines in Boston will eat rats, they'll eat pigeons. Any type of prey item they can find. So peregrines would be susceptible to SGAR poisoning if they ate an infected rat. I don't believe anyone is poisoning pigeons. I haven't heard of poisoning pigeons in any particular location. Doesn't mean they might be doing it, because pigeons aren't a protected bird species. They're invasive, they're non-native, so they don't have the same protection in bird laws than some of our other birds. But I would suspect my bigger concern would be that the rats that the peregrines are eating are not poisoned. So certainly in that area, if you see black bait boxes, again, same thing we're talking here. This goes to any state, any town, seeing the black boxes and having open conversations with property owners about rat poison and alternatives is really the best way to educate those people and try to move away from the second generation rodenticide poisoning.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Cindy. Thanks, Michelle. So anyone else?
Just
I might-
lastly, I sent the dumpster ordinance and the structure, fee structure out, so you've got that, Sonia. Thank you, sorry.
Thanks so much. Okay.
Alan,
Michelle-
I might just mention one quick thing I saw earlier in the chat that someone answered correctly, but we've been talking a lot about the second generation SGARs. There was a first generation, they weren't as effective, but they still are poison. And so there are some cities who have put together citizens petitions to ban pesticides in their entire town or city, such as Arlington. That takes a sort of city council or town meeting vote, and then also has to be approved at the state legislature. And initially a lot of these towns were just trying to ban SGARs, but because we realize first generation is also available in causing problems, a lot of the cities and towns that are trying to go to citizen petitions are also including first generation. So I think in general, both first and second generation rodenticide poisonings are very toxic and should not be used. So just to clarify that, but I think most of the pesticide companies currently are using SGARs because of the more toxic impact it has on rodents, but also on our predators.
Yeah, apparently some rats at least developed a tolerance for the first generation, which is why then they up the ante. But one of the poisons they use, and one of the second generation poisons they use, I forget which one, was developed to poison raccoons, you know, much larger animals. So it's really overkill. Yeah. Sonia or Michelle, do you want to say anything in closing?
I just want to thank everyone for listening tonight. I will mention one of my fun facts. It's always good to have on like your next, Friday party to mention is that a barred owl can eat 40 mice in a day. So let's root for those barred owls and great horned owls. They're doing the work for us, and let's encourage them to stay in Waltham.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you so much to all of you for coming and sharing your concern and our concern about protecting our animals. As we've said, it's not just the wildlife. We know people among us whose pets have been harmed as well. So it's a major issue, and we will be reaching out to you in the next couple of days. Either myself or Alan will be sending you an email with our steps and our links and all of the good information. This recording I will stop this recording very soon. And we will also be putting that on our website, walthamlandtrust.org, most likely on our YouTube channel. And then I'm also going to be sharing it with WCAC, who was very great in sharing the promotion that we asked them to do. And they will be putting this somehow on their channel as well. So we'll have lots of resources for you to check back and refer to. Thank you.
Thanks. And feel free to unmute and say goodbye.
Have a great night. Stay warm.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night, everyone. Thanks for putting the forum on.
Thank you.